Hey everyone, and welcome back to the 1v1 series, and our first match in the second round. We're going to be changing up the traditional 6 category scoring system a bit. I'm going to hone down the categories to 4. The new categories somewhat encompass the previous categories, but instead they attempt to mould to how you were responded and make me consider a broader degree of evidence for my stats. The first category is called equipment. This category comprises a simple aspect of the characters, considering their clothing or armour, their weaponry or lack of, and finally their power. Simple. The second category is called speed. This category looks at their agility, movement speed, attack speed, and proficiency with performing their power. The third category is called efficiency. This category details the killer's ability to fight. It comprises looking at their core strength, their resistance capability, and their endurance. Finally, we have the category called history. This is where we look into the lore and identify the things or people that this killer has already previously faced, and make a judgment based off of that on how well they'd perform in a 1v1 as a result of prior skill or encounters. Each category is getting scored out of 10. This is for a total point score out of 40. Same as before, the higher number wins. Let me know what you think of these categories. I am happy to change them as we go through. With these scores and my own reasoning for each of the numbers, we will decide who I think would win in a 1v1 fight. I'm going to try and be as objective as possible and be without any bias. The goal of this series being a search for the strongest killer in the game. Today we are seeing who would win in a 1v1 fight, the Hillbilly or the Hag. Okay, so let's look at equipment first. Billy's main assets in terms of weaponry are his chainsaw, which he holds in one hand, and his cattle hammer, which he holds in the other. These are two very heavy-duty weapons that require some sturdy handling, and at this he wields them both at once. This means that both of his arms will be occupied, but it also means he's capable of using both in an instant to either rush or swing. Billy's clothing, on the other hand, is not so protective. He's wearing pretty normal clothes, no sleeve, not much general protection. He doesn't have any exterior armoring or anything like that. With this said, Billy's skin looks to be a bit thicker and more resistant than a typical human's. We can back this up a bit more with evidence from the Tome cutscenes, where he's shot in the leg, and although he falls, he continues to stand afterwards. There's also other things that happen, like he gets mauled by a dog, for example. His power is just his chainsaw, however, despite the weight of his weapons, he can sprint with it at high speeds. All in all, he has a light protective build, but a powerful strike. So I'm giving him a 7. Good weapons with some protection and a decent power. Hag has a similar approach to Billy with light protection but a strong and repeated blow. So Hag's main weapon is her arm, which sounds not so useful, but this thing does as much damage as any other bladed or blunt weapon in the game, so her arm can also do as much as Billy's hammer, for example. It's also noted in the lore that it can cut through flesh and bone alike. Because it's attached to her also, being her arm and all, she's going to be able to swing it quickly and also control it with a great degree. Hag's clothing or armor is non-existent. She has none aside a few rags, which means if she gets struck, it's seemingly going to do a lot of damage. This on top of her crippled posture, and she doesn't exactly seem like that great of a contender. However, her main redeeming quality is her traps, which she can set quickly, place everywhere, and also teleport between or use to trick her opponent. And someone like Billy in particular, with not the best conventional intelligence, may be easily tricked by this. I'm going to give her an 8, which I know may seem high. The thing is, it's a situation of two low protection, heavy hitters, except one of them is much smaller and can teleport, as well as deceive. So I think although Hag has less power behind her blows, and likely less resistance, she's still above in equipment. Okay, so on to speed. Both Hag and Hillbilly have interesting statistics for speed, as although Billy has a far more typical definition of direct speed with his chainsaw sprint, Hag does have the ability to teleport, which is arguably a far quicker movement. Let's figure out Billy's speed score first though. Billy's clearest speed indicator is his max speed obtained when he chainsaw sprints, which goes up to 9.2 meters per second, and is noted in the lore to be superhuman. Aside this, his base speed is 4.6 meters per second. Despite all of Billy's speed, he doesn't really excel in any other section of the speed category though, as his agility isn't great. He limps along, and even when he does sprint, he can't really turn that well aside the initial flick, and when he ends the sprint, he either gets a brief stun animation or has to recover from the chainsaw swing. His attack speed also isn't particularly efficient, as he has to rev up the chainsaw, and his hammer looks to be heavy even if he is capable of wielding it. So again, this is kind of a situation where in some ways he's great, in others he's pretty average. I think I'm going 7 again. Speed for Hag is very odd, as she seems like she's quite quick and agile despite her bent back, as she can set her traps quickly and seemingly crawl about in an almost animalistic way. In the lore, she is literally mistaken for an animal. This makes me think she's actually quite quick, considering this in combination with her traps allowing her to teleport. Her traps in themselves also activate very quickly and act as jump scares when hit, which again would be a pretty effective tool against Hillbilly, who could get easily confused. Her attack speed after teleporting is also instant, and even when she does the basic attack, it's fairly quick still. Her movement speed is also only 4.4 meters per second, which is 0.2 meters per second under the average and also under Billy. Overall, I'm giving Hag an 8, mainly because this slightly lower movement speed is somewhat inconsequential when she can teleport. Okay, so on to our third category, efficiency. Let's look at Billy first. I think first off that Billy's resistance is pretty decent, despite him not having any armor or protective clothing. In attempts to kill him as a child in the lore, Billy's parents pour boiling water over him and he survives, which shows that he certainly has a thicker or denser skin. He's also shot and mauled by dogs in the lore, which again he does survive and seems to only need to recover from, like any other wound, which shows a thicker skin for sure to direct impact. He also has the perk Enduring and also Lightborn, which is a resistance form I suppose. For strength in the lore, he overpowers the chief of police by making him plunge his own knife into himself. He also full on instantly decapitates people in the lore left, right and center with a single swing, so yeah, he's got some strength on him. He's also capable of taking down even bigger animals like cows with single hits. Finally, he carries two very hefty weapons which will require strength to wield. Endurance wise, he does literally have a perk called Enduring, and there's also the factor that he can basically infinitely sprint at superhuman speeds, only stopped if something gets in his way. So for efficiency, Billy is getting an 8. Held back by the fact that although he has relentlessness, he doesn't seem to have too much strategy other than swinging as much as he can. For Hag, it's unclear whether she's resistant really. In the lore, we learn that she's effectively slowly eaten away at while she's still alive by cannibals, and she survives this despite them eating down to her bone in some cases. This however isn't really resistance in the sense of an attack, but more so that she can survive in dire circumstances and through great amounts of pain. This does mean however that her endurance as a result is surely high. The fact she can withstand pain and continue going to the point of her flesh literally being torn and eaten off is kind of incredible to be honest. For strength, we have a similar factor to earlier in that her hand can allegedly cut through flesh and bone, and we can assume this is the tool she uses to take down the cannibals she kills in the lore. Aside that though, speed is more her thing, and so I think her strength isn't overly considerable aside her hand. The potential she has however to set up her traps cleverly and use distractions, quick successive blows and other tactics could make her a worthy opponent. She's getting a respectable 7 here, mainly because direct resistance seems quite low and her endurance only does so much when faced with a cattle hammer. Okay, on to history. Both Hag and Hillbilly share very similar histories of revenge upon those who have punished them or treated them poorly, and from what I can tell from reading the lore, they both have a good degree of experience when it comes to taking on opponents or lots at once, so this may be a tough one to rank honestly. Hag's kill count is unclear really, but she effectively gets revenge on the cannibals who took her and tortured her by doing the same back to them. There isn't much of a description though. Prior to being taken, she was a pretty regular girl, with the only thing kind of noteworthy being that she messed around with different hexes that could give her luck and others that cause misfortune and such. She does take out what I would imagine is a group of people at least, but I don't think it was the whole village though. Her use of hexes could give her a tactical advantage for sure. It seems to be based on the lore that the Hag knows how to play to her strengths, so I'm giving her a 7. This is also partly boosted by the fact that these hexes and symbols are noted to give her supernatural powers, which realistically could come in many different forms. Billy is mentioned to have killed both his parents in the lore as well as a ton of cows and other livestock around the farm. These are something, but they aren't quite a group of cannibals. It's not so impressive to take down 2 regular, likely fairly old people and a bunch of animals, which won't have enough time to react to a superhuman speed chainsaw flying their way. He does also get a lot of practice on cows as a child on the request of his father. It does show however that he knows how to attack things I guess, especially from a young age he seems to get acquainted to it. He further goes on to kill a farmer in the Arcus entry with a shovel by decapitating him with a single blow, which is quite impressive. However, again, the guy is defenseless and caught off guard. In the Tome Lore though, his parents' deaths are kind of retconned somewhat and made so his father dies alongside the chief of police and some other police officers visiting Coldwind Farm. This is a pretty impressive feat as they do have guns and they do shoot at him. He then takes on even more police and even some police dogs too, so he kind of has a good case for being able to take on more animalistic things closer to Hag, like like the dogs. Overall, I think he's getting a 9. He quite clearly has an impressive track record and has been killing things since he was a kid, which is sad, but it means he's going to be very conditioned to it. Hag is someone who has done it for survival purposes more so. So this brings the final scores to 31 to Hillbilly and 30 to Hag, so Hillbilly wins. This means he will be moving on to the next round and fighting in the third heat. Here's the updated round 2 table. Now it is time for the description of the fight. The Hillbilly stands in the doorway of the Thompson house, staring out over the cornfields, his chainsaw rested by his side and ready to go. As the wind blows, the corn moves slowly, drifting about. Something catches his eye though. A corner of the field that looks to be billowing more than the others, as if there was something wandering through it. He grabbed his chainsaw and readied his hammer, revving it up and sprinting through the corn to the disturbed position, shredding everything in his path. When he had reached the area, he could not see any disturbance. It all looked normal, then boom! The screech of a woman pierced the air as a small figure appeared in front of him, her hands crippled and her back bent like his. Billy raised his hammer without thought and smashed down at the woman. The hammer drifted right through her though. It made him lose his footing and stumble onto the dirt below. He got back up and moved forward, as 2 more of the small crippled hags popped from the ground and glared at him. He raised his chainsaw and sawed through both, but nothing. All of a sudden he heard scuttling approaching from behind, just in time to turn to see another one of the hags crawling toward him. This time he just stared in confusion. These things couldn't hurt him, he figured. The hag raised her clawed hand and struck down, slashing across the Hillbilly's chest. He groaned in pain and attempted to squash the creature with his foot. It was too quick though. It scuttled beneath him, biting into his leg, its teeth like small daggers. He swung the hammer and slammed it against the side of the hag's head. It connected and made a cracking sound as it did, small specks of blood flying from her. She looked stunned as she scratched out a symbol on the floor, clawing away helplessly. Billy walked forward, readying another blow, when another hag burst out in front of him again. He could see the real one though. He moved past the fake and ran toward it. The hag's claws suddenly punctured into Billy's back, grabbing at his twisted spine. He dropped his hammer to the ground, and with a pained groan he reached back, grabbing the hag by her neck and tearing her away from him. He held her high as she thrashed out at him. He slammed her down and revved his chainsaw, before letting its blade saw the hag in 2. He looked at the small creature now in 2 pieces, proud that he had defended his land. Alright, well that's gonna do it. I do hope you enjoyed. Thanks, and goodbye.